Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another of our ForeFlight webinars. This session is scheduled to last about 45 minutes or so, which should leave us 15 minutes for general questions, maybe some demonstrations of features you'd like to see a little bit more of. If during the main portion of the webinar you have any questions, please use the Q&A button on the bottom right corner of the Zoom webinar screen. That way one of the folks who are on the call now will be able to reply to you as quickly as possible. The scope of this session is to walk users of ForeFlight Mobile through the tools and features of the application that can be used to plan a VFR Cross Country flight. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to see how ForeFlight can augment, or in many cases, replace traditional VFR cross-country planning tools. My name is Jeremy Lippart. I'm a member of the customer education team here at ForeFlight. If you recognize my voice, it's because I've done several of these webinars. You also may have seen me at Sun and Fun or AirVenture or a couple of the other shows around the country that we give seminars and forums like this in person. What I'll cover today, my agenda for today, is going to start with a brief overview, and I mean brief, overview of traditional cross-country planning. This will be followed by planning a cross-country route in ForeFlight Mobile. We'll take a look at some pre-flight planning tools, some relevant en route tools, and then lastly, if time allows, it's possible I'll run short of time before I get to this, but if time allows, some post-flight tools. I like to start every one of these webinars just taking a brief moment to talk about the devices we use in the cockpit and some differences you may notice based on how you use the device. So the graphics for this presentation will be primarily showing an iPad in landscape view. That's what's on the left-hand side here, but many of us fly with our device in portrait mode. The features and the functions of the two are identical to one another. The primary difference is that the navigation toolbar across the bottom of the screen contains more buttons in the landscape view than in portrait view. Any buttons you don't see along the bottom of the screen can be found by tapping on the More button, which will always be in the lower right-hand corner. If you're using an iPhone to fly rather than an iPad, you'll notice there are even fewer buttons displayed in the navigation toolbar. Again, anything can be found by just tapping on that More button in the lower right-hand corner. And if you're using an iPhone in landscape view, the navigation toolbar is hidden to maximize your view of the map or whatever other content you may be looking at. So again, I want to start with a very brief overview of traditional cross-country planning. So this is something we all learned how to do when learning how to fly. You may still be doing this by hand. ForeFlight can basically replace all of these functions. So what you see here is I planned a cross-country route from El Paso with a stopover in Deming, New Mexico, and finally terminating in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. So I used my E6B calculator. I had my plotter, obviously a pen or pencil. I used my VFR sectional. I have my paper Navlog here. I pulled up AWS forecast. Maybe I called for a weather brief, but I have all that information here, and this was used as part of that plan. And you'll notice, hopefully nothing on here is unfamiliar to you. I have all my frequencies listed. I have my traffic pattern altitude highlighted there. I have my per leg fuel burn, estimated fuel burn, my per leg estimated time en route, my wind correction angles, all of that stuff was calculated. You can see I made some mistakes too on my wind correction angle and my true heading that I had to cross out and write down the correct data. This is the same route I'm going to reproduce on ForeFlight Mobile exactly as you see this here. And what you'll see is basically everything I've done by hand can be done in ForeFlight Mobile. So that's where we'll start, is our cross-country route planning on ForeFlight. So today I'm going to be planning a cross-country trip, again, from El Paso to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I'm looking at ForeFlight on my iPad. I don't have any map layers active, so I'll go ahead and I'll start activating the map layers that I would like to use for my planning. This may vary with your preferences, the type of flying you're doing, the area you're in, but I'm going to walk through how I would do this. So I'm going to open up my map layer selector. First, my route, what I'm going to use today for my route planning is going to be my aeronautical map, my VFR sectional, and my aerial map in some combination of the three. So I'm going to start by opening up my aeronautical map. And I'm going to activate my sectional as well. So I'll turn on my VFR sectional. So the sectional is familiar to all of us. Again, this is what we primarily use when we're learning how to fly and learning how to plan cross-country trips. So I'm going to begin my planning process by entering in my departure airport. I want to point out that because my aeronautical map is active, I can interact with it the same way I would regardless of whether or not the sectional was visible too. So this is just part of how we combine these tools to make planning a little quicker. So I know I'm departing from El Paso. I'll go ahead and tap on that. I'll tap on El Paso International here. And this will, from the right-hand side, I can see my additional airport information. I may or may not look at this information in a little more detail as I'm planning, but for now, I'm just going as simple as possible, and then I'll look into ways we can farther expand our route planning. So I'll add this to my route, and I can see that El Paso, Kilo, Echo, Lima, Papa has been added as a route element, and my map is zoomed in a little bit and recentered to highlight that airport. So now I have one route element. In this case, it will be my departure airport because it's the first route element in my route string. So Truth or Consequences, New Mexico is northwest of El Paso. Its airport identifier is Kilo Tango Charlie Sierra. I can see it on the map. There it is right there. I can see Kilo Tango Charlie Sierra on my map. But for my cross-country scenario today, and like I showed you in my paper Navlog, I wanted to make a stop in Deming before proceeding to my final destination. Maybe I'm picking up a friend. Maybe I'm dropping a friend off, whatever the scenario calls for. I'm just going to repeat the exact same workflow I did to add El Paso, and I'll tap on Deming Municipal Airport. I'm going to add this to my route, and I can see the first leg of my VFR Cross Country as a direct route from El Paso to Deming. I can repeat this process again just to add Truth or Consequences just by tapping on Kilo Tango Charlie Sierra. It's northeast of Deming. But let's say for the sake of argument, I didn't know the ICAO identifier, or in this case, let's say I didn't know, I couldn't find it on the map. I didn't know exactly where it was. So you can add route elements, you can add airports using the flight plan drawer as well, and that's what I'll do here. I'll go ahead and open up my flight plan drawer, and I'll just enter in the airport identifier for my destination. If I didn't know the ICAO airport code, I could just use the search bar in the upper right and use that as well. But in this case, I'm just going to use my pop-up keypad, enter in my ICAO identifier. I'll hit space or return. Either one is the same functionality. I'll hit space or return to enter in that airport identifier. And now I have that effectively my complete route. So basically that's it. I've planned a VFR cross country from El Paso to Deming into or terminating at Truth or Consequences. But I do need to look at some more information. The paper Navlog I did a lot of work on that. I had a lot more details with that. So I want to edit this a little bit, make this more closely resemble what I did when I was using a pen and paper and a calculator and a plotter. So I'll reopen my flight plan drawer, and I can see this is my route, El Paso to Deming to Truth or Consequences. One thing I want to do is make sure that I'm planning with the correct aircraft. So I'll go ahead and tap on my aircraft tab, and this will show me all aircraft that are available to me to plan. Now, my screen most likely looks different than yours because I have a lot of different aircraft profiles because I do lots of different training events and things like that, and it varies the type of aircraft we're using. So you probably won't see as many aircraft as I have presented here, but just make sure you select the proper aircraft. So then when when ForeFlight is doing the performance calculations, they match up to your aircraft's configuration. Because if you use the wrong aircraft, your performance numbers, your fuel burn, your ETE, all that stuff is going to be off. With that said, I'm going to check on my performance profile next. I'll go ahead and click on my performance profile field, and these will vary by aircraft. For this flight, I'm going to select my 65% power mixture. So in my example here, these are pre-built performance profiles that are available to me as a Performance Plus user. If you're curious, if you're not a Performance Plus user and you're curious which profiles are available. You can find that by visiting foreflight.com/products/performance directory, and we'll try to drop that into the chat so you guys can get that link. If you are a basic or Pro Plus user, you have the option to create a performance profile manually by entering in climb, cruise, and descent speeds and fuel burn. Because I am a Performance Plus subscriber, I'm just going to select this pre-built performance profile here by tapping on that radial button. The last thing I want to do, well, not the last thing I want to do, but one of the things I want to do as part of my planning is adjust my cruise altitude. So that's the third field there on the left-hand side. I'll go ahead and tap on that. You may have noticed already that as currently set, this violates our VFR, our visual flight rules. So I'll go ahead and tap on that, and you'll notice that it's set to IFR. That's my default setting here. It's set to IFR, so I want to make sure I change that to VFR. And you'll notice that those altitudes that I can choose from have changed also. Our first leg is a westerly heading, so I'm going to adjust this to 6,500 feet. I also want to point out that we can see our ETE at those different altitudes, our fuel burn at those different altitudes, and whether or not there's a forecasted headwind or tailwind. This will vary based on our departure time. So I'll go ahead and select that altitude, and the very last bit of basic route planning I'd like to do is change my ETD. So I'll go ahead and click on my ETD. I'll select a departure, date, and time. And in this example, the departure date and time I selected was pretty much exactly what it was already set to. If you were selecting a departure date and time substantially different from when you were sitting down to plan this, you would see that performance summary below the route that would have changed to reflect the new forecasted data at the departure time. So this is my route. Again, this is as is. This is adequate, probably. I do want to look at my Navlog, though. I want to take a preview of that. So I'll go ahead and tap on my Navlog button, and I can see my per leg heading, my estimated fuel burn. Again, per leg is presented here. I have my estimated time en route. If winds aloft are available for the planned flight, wind correction will be calculated in the headings column. On the far right-hand side, you see those fields that currently have no data in them. These will populate with actual values as I fly this route. So if I'm flying, in this case, it's just 2 legs, but the remaining time and my ETA will adjust as I'm in the air, and as I transition to the next route, you'll see those fields grayed out because there is no more remaining time. I've already passed it, so the ETA is no longer relevant. So again, that's basically it. I've completed a direct route planning from El Paso to Deming before proceeding on to Truth or Consequences. We could probably fly this route as is, or it may be best practice to make some minor adjustments here and add some en route visual reference points. So if you recall, you probably don't, but on my paper Navlog I had several intermediate reference points that were visual reference points along each leg of this flight. So I can use ForeFlight to do that as well. I'm going to show you a couple different ways we might want to do that. So I've zoomed in to the first leg of my planned flight. So there's El Paso to Deming. I'm still looking at my aeronautical map. I'm still looking at my sectional. And right now, the only thing I'm showing on my aeronautical map is airports. But I would like to be able to plan and check out. I want to plan and see what visual reference points are available along the way, along my route. And I can see on my sectional that there is a published visual reference point right here at the Sunland racetrack. To adjust this display, to have this show up my aeronautical map, I'm just going to go ahead and tap on, and there's the visual reference point. I'm just going to go ahead and tap on my VFR settings. Here I can toggle on or off things I want to see, don't want to see, based on my preferences, based on how I prefer to fly. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to toggle on my VFR waypoints. So right now they're turned off. I'm going to go ahead and toggle those on. And you'll notice that nothing changed on the map. And the reason for that is because I was zoomed a little too far out. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. And now I can interact with this waypoint the same way I would any other aeronautical map element. I'll go ahead and tap on that. I have my option to create a direct to, add to my route, view a weather forecast. I'm just going to add this to my route. Now, you'll notice also that this added this to the end of my route string because that was the order in which I added these elements. El Paso, Deming, Truth or Consequences, then Sunland Park Racetrack. There's a lot of different ways I can reorder this. The simplest is I can just grab it, hold it, and just reorder it. So I can do this with any route elements that are in my route string. So now I have a leg that makes a little more sense. El Paso, overfly, or maybe a beam, Sunland Park Racetrack, to Deming, to Truth or Consequences. So I want to do this again. I want to have some more visual reference points. So I've just scrubbed along my route. I'm looking at my VFR sectional and scrubbing along my route. This is just northeast of Deming. It looks like I'll be overflying this windmill farm here, and I can see it on my sectional in the center, and I can see that ForeFlight has also called out the tallest, in this case, the tallest windmill. So I can add this to my route as is. I don't need to change anything, but for the sake of this exercise, I want to turn off my VFR sectional and activate my aerial map so I can get a better look, or maybe a preview, of what this windmill farm may look like at altitude. So I've toggled on my aerial map. I just used my map layer selector. My aeronautical map is still active. I've just deactivated the sectional. I've zoomed in slightly, and here I can see the windmill farm on my aerial layer. That's the windmill farm that was represented on the sectional. To increase my situational awareness, I can also toggle on my obstacle layer. Again, this may be more effort than you need to do for the type of flying you're doing. I just want to walk through these tools that are available to you. So I'll go ahead, open up my map layer selector. I'll toggle on my obstacles, and we can see that based on our current flight path, I'll be flying pretty close to one of these obstacles here, one of these windmills, and I believe that's the same windmill that was called out, or what we were looking at earlier. If I want to get information about an obstacle, I can just go ahead and tap on that, and I'll see some information. So here I see windmill, 5,201 feet, MSL, 424 feet, AGL, and I get some lighting information as well. And I can do this with any obstacle. If you recall, our cruising altitude was set in our plan at 6,500 feet, but we are now on an easterly heading, so we'll have to change our cruise altitude to an odd altitude plus 500. Given the height of these obstacles and the terrain, I can now use this information to plan this leg of the flight to be at 7,500 feet. That should give us plenty of clearance over terrain and plenty of clearance over these obstacles. What I'm doing, though, so the process of all of this, or the point of all of this, rather, was to mark a visual reference point along my route. So I've seen from both the sectional, the aerial map, and my obstacle layer that I should be able to see the windmill farm. You'll also notice there appears to be a small lake west of my course that I should be able to see at altitude as well. Again, I want to, if possible, this is probably a better visual reference point because this is going to be off my wing. I won't be covering this up with the nose of the airplane. It should be something I can see fairly clearly as I'm approaching the windmill. So I'll do that by tapping and holding a point. I'll tap on more. Now I could add this point to my route the same way I added the racetrack west of El Paso, but in this case, rather than do that, I want to make a custom point. Maybe I want to fly this route again. Maybe just for the way I'm planning, I'd prefer to have this saved as a custom point. So I'll go ahead and tap on save. And I can just leave everything as is. I can start to add some more information. I can add a custom name to make this more relevant to me. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll tap on my name field. I've renamed this Windmill Farm. And you'll notice I added a description here as well, where it says pond off of left wing. So once this is loaded onto the map, I'll be able to pull up those details if I need them. So I'll tap on save. And now I can add this point to my route the same as any other point. And I'll just go ahead and tap on add to route. So I'm going to scrub a little farther along my route. I'm looking northeast again as I as I plan my flight from Deming to Truth or Consequences. I see some additional things that would make a good visual reference point. I can repeat the process. I'll tap and hold, in this case in front of Caballo Lake. I'll tap more. I'll give this a name. I'll just rename it Caballo Lake. And this would be a good visual reference point for my flight. Now you'll notice that this point is to the right of my my planned route. I'm actually going to adjust my routes to make it so that I'm flying directly over this point, and that is more, to me, it's because of the way the approach into Truth or Consequences is going to look. So I'll go ahead, I'll tap on my add to route, and now I can see that my plan is to fly directly over the southern end of Caballo Lake as I fly into and start planning my approach into Truth or Consequences. So these additional points are carried over to my Navlog as well. We can see them presented here on the map. I have El Paso, overfly the racetrack, Deming, overfly the windmill farm with the pond off my left-hand side, overfly the southern end of Caballo Lake into Truth or Consequences. If I want to see these in my Navlog, I'll just go ahead and tap on Navlog. And now I can see all of my en route waypoints displayed in my Navlog with my ETEs, my distance between legs, my estimated fuel burn per leg is all displayed here. So this should match up more or less with the paper Navlog that I did. The difference is because these were planned at two separate times. That's why the times, the heading and the fuel burn is slightly different, but it should be more or less the same information. So this is how you could do this, effectively replacing all the paper Navlog planning. And it takes moments to do. The walkthrough took much longer than this would actually do. If we have any student pilots in the audience, a couple things I want to highlight here. You'll notice that the legs between airports do meet. So El Paso to Deming, they do meet the minimum criteria for solo cross-country flight as per 61109, but the total distance is less than 150 nautical miles. So this does not meet that requirement as of now. But if we added a return trip back to El Paso, this most certainly would. So if you are using ForeFlight as your getting your private pilot license, these tools can also help you make sure you're doing this planning correctly. Most of the students will probably still be asked to do this via pen and paper and sectional and plotter, but you can use ForeFlight to back up, maybe verify your calculations if that's the case. So returning to an overview of my route, I do want to pull up some destination information for Truth or Consequences. I can do that by tapping on Truth or Consequences. Information pane appears on the right-hand side. I'm going to look at my comms info. That's what's displayed right now in a moment, but the first thing I want to do is preview my available runways. Let's say I've never flown into Truth or Consequences before. I'd like to get some idea of what to expect as I'm on approach. So I'll go ahead and tap my runway tab, and I can see that there are a lot of runways at Truth or Consequences. I can see them all displayed with their type and the length. As long as I'm connected to the internet, I can see my current wind information. Be aware, this is current wind information. If I'm planning this departure farther out in the future, maybe I'm planning this for, I don't know, the weekend, 2 or 3 days from now or something, I may not want to rely on this information without revisiting it prior to departure. So this is current wind projection. So if you're in flight also and you're connected to in-flight weather via ADS-B like a Century, this will update with the current weather as well. But let's assume for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be using runway 31. If I tap on that runway itself, I can get information about declared distances, slope, runway lighting. For now, let's assume it's going to be a daytime flight. I'm less concerned about slope. The distance, it's a very long runway. It should be fine for my aircraft. I'm just going to verify, yes, runway 31 is what I plan to plan with. I'll return back to my airport information. And again, I've said I've never been to this airport before. I want to get some more preview. So I'll go ahead and tap on my 3D view. And Performance Plus users Performance Plus users, you can view a 3D preview of an airport. If you are planning a flight at night, you can preview lighting systems at night as well. You just tap on the little crescent moon in the lower right. Again, for my planning purposes for this demonstration, I've decided I'm using runway 31, so that's what I'll preview. I'll go ahead and tap on 31. And I can see what a 1 mile final approach into runway 31 at this airport will look like. So again, as I'm doing my planning, I can start to prepare mentally. I can start to, as part of my planning process, be aware that this is more or less what I should expect when I'm 1 mile final on runway 31 on my descent. So I'll return back to my airport information to continue with some planning. I would like to view an airport diagram because I've never been here before. I can do that by tapping on my taxiways icon here. And here I get a general idea of the runways, what the taxiways look like. I can even get an idea of where any facilities or infrastructure is located as well. Returning to my map, if I'll scroll down in my airport information, I can also, without really leaving my plan here, I can review my chart supplement, my airport facilities directory, but just by tapping on that. And I can see all of the additional information and remarks that I will likely need when flying into this airport. So all of this information is displayed or is available from the airport information screen on the Maps tab. So I'm finalizing my cross-country route. One of the things that I like to do on ForeFlight, and this might be a personal preference, this might be something that doesn't apply to everyone equally, but I like to annotate my map in part to let me know at what point should I start tuning in a weather briefing or contacting tower or communicate on the CTAF. I like to plan to do this about 20 nautical miles out. Depending on what your route is, you can just use the ruler tool. That's 2 fingers on the map. Tap, hold, and spread your fingers out, and you can get that ruler tool. So I just did basically directly along my what I plan on being my approach path into truth or consequences, directly along my route. Spread my fingers out, try to see where 20 nautical miles is, and it's basically exactly at the southern end of Caballo Lake where I put my custom waypoint at. So it works well for me in this circumstance that I do have a visual reference point exactly at, or essentially at 20 nautical miles out, that I can then say, okay, at this point, this is when I'll tune in CTAF, or I'll tune in to ATIS, or whatever the situation is. So what I do is I turn on my annotate tool, just tap on that little marker icon, and then I'll just make notes at this point. So as I'm looking down, I'm looking over at ForeFlight, as I'm in the aircraft, I'm approaching Caballo Lake, I can see, hey, at this point, you should tune into the CTAF. You should turn into the ASOS, the ATIS, or Unicom, or whatever the case may be. I'm leaving my airport information on the right-hand side open as I'm making these annotations. I don't need to toggle back and forth or anything. But you can see I've marked down the ASOS frequency and the CTAF frequency. So all I need to have open is my map as I'm flying off approach Caballo Lake, and that's the information I need for what I need to start changing my, tuning my radio into. If you don't use annotations frequently, just know that they are geo-referenced to the map, so they will stay there. If I zoom out, they'll stay there at that same scale. If I navigate to a different area of the map, they will stay there. Those annotations, they will never be automatically removed. You do have to delete them manually. So go ahead and close my airport information tab, and I'm effectively done with my cross-country VFR flight plan. I showed you the Navlog. I showed you how I could add some individual en route waypoints. I've annotated my map. Just a couple other things I would like to do just to make sure my plan is as complete as possible. One of those is, again, I've never flown into this airport before. I'll go ahead and tap on my procedures button. I'm not flying an instrument approach or anything like that, but I do plan on entering the traffic pattern. This is maybe more important if you're at an untowered airport, but it still has value even with a towered airport. I'm going to choose my runway again for my planning purposes. I'm using runway 31. Then I'll pick my approach. Again, I'm just choosing this based on how my route kind of was. In reality, this would probably be based on whatever tower is telling me to do, assuming I'm at a towered airport. An untowered airport, it's going to be based on the weather and other considerations. But in this case, I'm just going to select straight in as my approach, and I'll tap on Add to Route. Now, that traffic pattern is displayed on the map. It's displayed right here. I'm zoomed out a little bit, so it might be a little difficult to see that it is displayed. But you'll notice that in my flight plan drawer, it's included as well, along with the traffic pattern altitude, which on my paper Navlog I had highlighted in large text so that I knew as I approached this was the altitude I needed to be at when I entered the traffic pattern. So again, I'm effectively done, but I did mention that I wanted to stop in Deming. So as of now, the way this route is planned is I'm effectively overflying Deming. I'm not landing and then taking off at Deming. The way this route is, I'm just overflying Deming before continuing on to Truth or Consequences. Deming is untowered, so I could fly in, land, pick up or drop off my friend, whatever I'm doing, depart, and just continue on to Truth or Consequences. That I could probably do that. But if I did that, my Navlog won't exactly be accurate. It won't account for the different fuel burn on landing, on descent, on taxi, the different times, all of that stuff won't be accounted for. So again, maybe I'm confident with my flight. I don't feel I need to do all those additional calculations, but if I want to be accurate, I do. So there's a couple ways we can turn this into a more accurate cross-country flight plan that includes a landing and a subsequent takeoff in Deming. So the very first thing I'm going to do is just save my route. I'll tap on that star button there. And I'm going to give this route a unique name before hitting save. If you don't give it a unique name, ForeFlight will automatically save it with the departure destination airport pair. So I'm saving this cross country KTCS full. I'll go ahead and tap on save. Then I'm just going to remove everything from the route after Deming. So I'm just going to use that same functionality I did earlier, just by dragging stuff, in this case just out of the flight plan drawer. And now I have the first leg of my flight. It's El Paso, overflying Sunland Park Racetrack into Deming. I'm going to repeat everything I did for Truth or Consequences for Deming, which is now effectively my new destination. So I'll go ahead, open up my procedure tab. I'll view my traffic patterns. I'll choose one. I'll add it into my route. In this case, is midfield teardrop. I can see my traffic pattern altitude is displayed. I'll use that ruler tool to find a point 20 nautical miles. In this case, I guess, yeah, we're east of Deming, 20 nautical miles east of Deming. At that point, I'll make a mark on my map telling me that when I cross that point, again, if I have ForeFlight open, I have the map open, I'm flying my route, I can see at this point, this is when I want to start tuning into the CTAF, the ASOS, again, whatever. I'll save this route separately. I've made this cross-country leg 1. Go ahead and hit save. I can preview the Navlog for this route, and this should be accurate for this leg. Again, this will now include, this will calculate my fuel burn for landing, for takeoff, and I can include information for taxiing as well. I'm going to do the same thing for my second route. So I skipped the actual video of it, but all I did was I reloaded my full route and then deleted everything before Deming and then just resaved this as leg 2. Once I have those saved, at any moment, if I open up my favorites, and my favorites is this star and clock button here, I can see all 3 of them. I can see my first leg, and my second leg. I can just load those into my flight plan drawer. I can look at the Navlog for each leg. I can look at the Navlog for the full flight. I can make changes as needed, but all of this is now here. And depending on how I'm flying, this may be how I prefer to plan this. So I want to look at some additional situational awareness tools. These are going to be used for both planning. Depending on how you're flying, this might be en route tools as well. If I'm a pro or a Performance Plus user, I'll open up my Hazard Advisor map layer, as I know in this area we'll be flying over some terrain. So I've adjusted the slider on the right-hand side to reflect my cruise altitude. If I were in flight, this would automatically adjust to my altitude, and I can see immediately that it looks like there are some areas I should be concerned about. So here you'll notice those two, on the northern part of my route, it's terrain and an obstacle. And it looks like on the initial part of my route, just outside of El Paso, that might just be an obstacle. But they're highlighted in red because I'm being warned about them. So I do want to do some additional planning to make sure either I'm avoiding that terrain or obstacles or verifying it's not a factor for me. So I've reopened my flight plan drawer. I've zoomed in a little bit as well. And what I want to do first is look at this in profile view. I'll go ahead and tap on my profile view, and I can see those two potential danger areas. So we can see them on the left and on the right, the beginning and towards the end of my route. If I press and hold in the profile view, so I'm using the terrain at the end of my route first, I'm going to press and hold. That position will be highlighted on the map. So based on my routing, it looks like I should be comfortably, at least based on this plan and based on where that lake is and what I plan on flying, I should be comfortably to the west of that terrain. In this case, my the corridor that's being used to identify potential hazards is 8 nautical miles. So that's why this is being highlighted, even though I'm not flying into or directly over this terrain. So based on this, I don't feel I need to make any changes to my planning. Maybe just be aware that once I hit Caballo Lake, stick to the shoreline so I don't drift too far to the east and into terrain. So I'm okay with that potential danger. I want to look at that first one. This is at the beginning of my route. So I'll press and hold. And again, this will be highlighted on my map. So as I can see in this example, based on my departure, and this is right here, based on my departure, I'm going to be flying into this terrain or this obstacle, or I guess both in this case, about 5 nautical miles after my departure. You can see it highlighted up there in my profile view. Based on my climb profile and my direction of climb, I'm not confident I'm going to clear this terrain. So I do want to adjust my planning. So I may want to depart to the southeast and route around this terrain. That may be something I plan on doing. I might change my departure runway, so this is less of a factor. If that's not feasible, I may change my climb speed and then redo my my takeoff performance numbers to verify that I can clear this terrain. So in this case, I'm just presenting you the situational awareness tools. How you resolve this situation, this potential danger, is going to vary, obviously, based on where you're flying, how you're flying, and what options are available to you. So I may also want to preview weather for my flight. Again, if I'm planning this very far in advance, this is less relevant maybe, but if I'm planning, within the next day or two, this is probably a wise thing to do. I would always want to re-verify the weather as close to departure as possible, but whatever that timeline is, the tools are going to be the same. So first, let's say I am departing shortly. I'm departing within the hour, maybe. So I'm going to check as many of these as I can that would be relevant to my flight today. So I'm going to activate my radar layer. It looks like there is little to no radar activity along our planned route. In this example, our radar is an internet source composite layer generated from ground-based stations. It will display reflectivity measured in decibels that correspond to the intensity of precipitation, and the layer is updated every 5 minutes and will display about 55 minutes of data. If you are connected to an ADS-B receiver, like a Sentry Plus, you can receive live radar coverage at altitude. So our radar looks clear for our departure. Again, I'm assuming I'm departing within the hour in this example. I'll go ahead and look at my satellite imagery. And just like our radar, it looks like there's very little of concern on our satellite. On our satellite layer. Just like our radar layer, this is an internet sourced layer. I am also clear of clouds at our planned altitude. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, I did adjust my altitude slider to 6,000 feet. That's my cruise altitude, and it doesn't looks like it's going to be a very clear, nice day at our planned cruise altitude. The cloud layer is available to Pro and Performance Plus users. This is an hourly forecast that runs 18 hours into the future. If you are a Performance Plus subscriber, you also have the option to preview wind speeds at altitude for a 24-hour forecast. So again, as part of my planning, let's say I'm departing within the hour, I want to check radar, satellite, clouds, wind speed. Surface winds is a separate layer. In this case, this is wind speed at altitude. At any point on this, I can tap and hold on the map, and I can see that I do have a pretty robust tailwind for the second leg of my flight. So as part of my flight planning, I can get an idea of what the winds should be like at altitude. And there's a lot of other different planning tools we have. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but however you fly, whatever you normally use for planning, more likely than not, you can do that planning in ForeFlight as well. So what I want to do is just turn on my NOTAMs and my TFRs. These are not on by default. So just be aware that when you're flight planning, you should probably keep the TFR layer on at all times, but it is not enabled by default, and we do allow you to turn it off. So just make a mental note, I guess, maybe a checklist item whenever you are planning to make sure you've looked at the TFRs. So I have my NOTAMs and TFRs layers active. If I want to see if there's anything I need to be aware of, I would probably zoom in and look a little more closely. In this case, it looks like there might be something along my route west of El Paso, so I'll go ahead and zoom in. I'll tap on that NOTAM and I can see the details. This is unmanned aircraft is scheduled, surface to 400 feet AGL, and I can take note that this probably won't interfere based on my cruise altitude. If it does interfere, I may want to reroute around the NOTAM area, reroute around the TFR, whatever the circumstances require. So I'm back in my flight plan drawer. I'd like to send this over to my flights tab to do some additional flight planning and briefing. I'll go ahead and tap on my send to icon. I'm going to go ahead and tap on my flights tab. And now we'll look at some tools that are available in the Flights tab. The flight plan prepared in the Maps tab is now displayed on my Flights tab. Every field in blue text can be edited. So if you prefer to do your flight planning not on the map, if you don't want to do it, I guess, visually, you can do all that here as well. For now, I'm just going to scroll down to my weight and balance and fuel calculations. And because I'm a Performance Plus subscriber, I can do my weight and balance planning directly from the Flights tab. I don't need to go anywhere else. We do have another webinar coming up, I believe in a few weeks, that will go over more details about weight and balance planning. So this is going to be fairly quick what I go through now. If you're not a Performance Plus subscriber, you can do your weight and balance calculations via the weight and balance tab and just manually entering in the flight information. Because I am a Performance Plus subscriber, I can do all my planning here. I'll go ahead and change my my passenger count to 3 people. I've added 2 passengers, so myself, the pilot, plus 2 passengers, and 75 pounds of cargo. I can see my total payload there. I can see how much fuel I'll be burning too. That's below my weight and balance. And at the very top of the screen, I can view a summary of all the information I need. So distance, ETE, ETA, my estimated flight fuel, and a summary of the winds. So to see a more detailed view of my weight and balance, see if I'm within limits, I'll go ahead and tap on my weight and balance tab. I can see my CG envelope is displayed here. I can see that I am beyond my limits. I'm out of my limits for my aircraft, for my weight and balance profile. In this case, it looks like my takeoff weight exceeds my max takeoff weight. So I can scroll down and make some minor adjustments. If I were to tap on that error bar at the top, I'd see a description of what the error is. I can see what the error is, though. So I've gone ahead and scrolled down. Now, when I was doing on the Flights tab, I added the 2 passengers and 75 pounds of cargo. It just used the default weight of 200 pounds. I don't weigh 200 pounds. The people with whom I normally fly, they also don't weigh 200 pounds. So I can use these saved loads to better reflect more accurately the weights of my passengers. So I'll go ahead and tap on myself, 158, and I can do that with the other passengers as well. Once I added their, maybe not their specific weights, but weights that are more reflective of how much they actually weigh, I can see that I'm back within limits. So as part of my planning, I may want to, just like I looked at my Navlog, I may just want to preview this in a more traditional I guess a traditional format. I'll go ahead and tap on summary, and this is a printable, downloadable, shareable. You can just use this as a PDF weight and balance load summary for that flight plan. And it includes all my weight information, all my fuel information, all of that is calculated in here as well. I'll go ahead and close that out. I also want to view, maybe print a Navlog. I can do that by tapping on my Navlog button. And here we are viewing our basic Navlog format. We can tap the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner to adjust the format. I'm not going to. I'm going to keep the basic Navlog format because this is what's designed. This is designed to mimic what pilots typically use when they're learning how to plan VFR Cross Country flights. That's what this is meant to represent. If I scroll down, I can see more information. This includes things like magnetic heading, fuel burn, per leg distance, everything else you're used to seeing. As one note I want to point out, on the Navlog, the custom waypoints we added, those will appear as latitude, longitude. So if you are printing this, you may want to highlight this, mark this up with the names you gave those positions. So these two here were custom waypoints. One was the windmill farm. The other was the southern end of Caballo Lake. They're entered here as latitude, longitude, so I may want to make a note. You'll notice the racetrack is entered as the racetrack. That's because that's a published VFR point. I want to return back to my flights tab. The last thing I want to do is part of, well, maybe not the last thing, one of the last things I'll do as part of my briefing process is pull up a weather briefing. This is time sensitive, and it is in compliance with CFR 91103. So go ahead and tap on that. The briefing will be generated when you open it and time-stamped. So if you plan this days in advance and look at a weather briefing, when you reopen that flight and do a weather briefing an hour before departure, you'll receive an updated weather briefing, assuming you have access to the internet. And it will always be time-stamped here at the bottom to show you when it is this was generated. So this contains a variety of traditional weather products that you'd be familiar with, from pulling AWS weather, anything like that. It includes my en route METARs and TAFs where they're available, and any NOTAMs along my route. Before departing for the airport as part of my planning process, I want to review some pre-departure checklists. This will vary from user to user and does include any custom checklist or checklist you've previously loaded. The two I want to highlight here are my EFB pre-flight checklist, which will help me make sure ForeFlight and my device are ready for the flight. Returning to my checklist, you'll notice I have a custom checklist here at the bottom that's just before leaving the house. This is a checklist that I do just to make sure I have everything in my flight bag that is necessary. You'll see I have some additional notes. Flight bag includes headset, sunglasses, paper chart, USB-C cable, Sentry Plus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at some en route tools here. One of the main things, and if you've attended any of these webinars, we usually repeat this several times, is flying with the glide advisor and the own ship distance rings is always very helpful to monitor any airports for potential diversions. Give you an idea, if you had to divert, are you able to do so? And or can you quickly identify how far away you are from airports, from waypoints, anything like that? If you press and hold anywhere on the map, so all I'm doing is simulating my flight. This is the first leg of that. If you press and hold anywhere on the map, these are just en route features to help you on your VFR Cross Country. You can press and hold any on the map, and you can identify any nearby airport. So I just pressed and held on this is showing airports. This is any nearby airport. So I can pull up their airport information. I can do that from this dropdown. I can do that from the map as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just tap on one of these airports that shows here. I believe this is, November Mike 08. I'll go ahead and tap on that. Again, I could tap on this in my information panel on the right-hand side, and I can preview runways at that airport. So again, if I do need to divert for whatever reason, I can get an idea of, is this something, quickly get an idea, maybe plan for a diversion along your route, like maybe mark airports that worst case scenario, I may have to divert to these airports. You can do this as part of the pre-planning. Additional en route features. I mentioned this at the top, that per leg distance and the ETA will adjust dynamically while you're in flight. So if you're used to manually on your paper Navlog marking down the time at which you cross the next waypoint, any of that information, this is going to be done, calculated automatically in flight. Another interesting feature, if you need to make any adjustments to your flight plan and route, you can do that pretty easily. So let's say, again, my plan was to fly from El Paso to Deming and proceed to Truth or Consequences. Let's say I am unable to land at Deming, or maybe I got a text or a message or something that said, hey, your friend's not here. You don't have to land here to pick them up. So I'm going to ignore that part of my plan. I could obviously just turn my aircraft and fly towards Truth or Consequences. But if I want to make this as, make sure I'm planning this as well as I can tap on that next leg. This is the leg that would take me from Deming to the Windmill Farm, because that's my next waypoint. And I can choose to fly directly to that next waypoint. So let's say I got a message of some sort, text message, friend says, hey, I'm not going to be able to meet you in Deming, whatever it is, I can say, okay, I'm still looking at my map. I'm still at altitude. I'm still flying along. Just open up my flight plan drawer, tap on that next leg, and then fly direct to. And my route on the map has changed, as well as the information in my Navlog. This is now changed to reflect the new route. So when I'm estimating my ETA, when I'm estimating my ETE to the next waypoint, this is now correct. I can use the map just to make sure I've turned onto something resembling the appropriate heading, and then maybe I can recalculate as needed to make sure I stay on this route. Just like with airports, if I tap and hold anywhere on the map, I can pull up nearby and view nearby nav aids. So in this case, rather than airports, I've just selected nav aids. If you tap on more for a nav aid and then tap on details, I can see the distance and the magnetic bearing to that VOR. So this is just some situational awareness when you're at altitude. If you need to navigate to a specific VOR or need to know where you are relative to that specific VOR, this is another tool that's available to you. All right, so I'm running a little short on time, so I'm going to run through my post-flight tools really quickly. Basically, this is just going to be how you can save a cross-country flight to your logbook and make sure it's as accurate as possible. So I've completed my flight. I want to make sure I log my hours correctly. So my example, I'm just going to export the track log I recorded during my flight. I'll tap on my track logs button. I could also tap, if I don't see track logs, tap on more, then open up track logs. Or I could just go into my logbook and import this directly. I'm going to open up my track log. I can find the track log from my records at left. Here they are. These include the source of the track log. For this example, this was Flight Sim in ForeFlight. It includes the tail number and the hours flown. I'll go ahead and tap on my send to icon. I'll send this over to my logbook. My logbook will automatically be opened. I can verify this track log coding is correct. Any field in blue can be edited. So if I need to make any changes to the hours, to the tail number, any of that stuff is edited. You'll notice on the left-hand side also, I have these drafts from my ForeFlight logbook. If I wanted to import it, I would just open up my logbook and I would tap on this entry and then import this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. I'm going to adjust all the fields as needed. I'm going to adjust everything as needed, and this will automatically save. You can append images to this. You can add any notes, anything you need to do. So that brings us to an end of how to get the most out of ForeFlight Mobile when planning a VFR cross-country trip. And we do have some time left for some questions. All right, everyone, we've got about 10 or 15 minutes left for questions. I'm going to apologize in advance that we will not get to everyone's questions. There are quite a few that have come in. I'm going to try to focus on the ones that we've gotten repeat questions of. If after this is done, you still need additional information, you still have additional questions, these are some resources available to you. The simplest way to get in touch with us is via email at team@foreflight.com. If you haven't yet done so, I'd recommend adding the pilot's guide to your documents tab. It's already in there, but you might have to download it. That's basically the POH for the app. Any question you have, you should be able to find in the pilot's guide. It's a very easy to access PDF. I'll pull it up when I answer my questions too and show you what it looks like on the iPad. And if you'd like to register for any upcoming webinars, I know I'm doing another one in February on weight and balance, or view any previous webinars, you can do that at foreflight.com/webinars. So in just a moment, you're going to see the screen change here. Keith is going to put up a live version of the iPad, so I can hopefully walk through some of the major questions, that came in during this seminar. So this is my iPad. You'll notice a slight delay on this. It's just the way Zoom kind of works. So if I speak faster than I'm doing the actions, it's because of that delay. So this is the route that I had used when I was planning for the seminar I just completed, and I'm using my aerial map layer. So one of the primary questions we got several times is, what is this corridor on here? I'm going to zoom in just a second. There you go. What is that corridor that's being shown left or right of my route? So that is the hazard corridor, and that's related to the Hazard Advisor feature, which is a Pro and Performance Plus feature. So if you are not seeing that, that's what that is related to. If you have the Hazard Advisor and you'd like to see where you can edit that corridor, there's a couple different ways we can do it. I'm just going to turn on my Hazard Advisor. I just tapped on my map layer selector. I've scrolled down a little bit, turn on my Hazard Advisor, and I can see this little settings icon on the right-hand side, and you can see my options here for this corridor width. If I go ahead and change that, let's change that to 20 nautical miles, I'll see that increase left or right of my center line. I don't remember which layer I was showing at the time, but somebody asked a question about the altitude slider. Some of the layers that we show on the map do have this altitude slider on the left and right. You can use that when planning a route. So with my Hazard Advisor here, I can kind of use this and see at what altitude does it become less dangerous, at what altitude does it become more dangerous. If I were in flight, this would report my my GPS altitude as well. So this is a dynamic layer, again, though, that is not available to all users. One of the things that makes these webinars a little difficult is you may see things on my device that you don't have access to. It's because I have all of the highest tier subscription things. There's a feature you would like to learn more about. Again, the pilot's guide is probably the simplest way to do that, or you can email us at team@foreflight.com. So there are a couple other questions we got in about the user waypoints and the custom waypoints. Specifically, a couple people asked how they could make custom waypoints, user waypoints that are abeam the route rather than along the route. And it's pretty simple to do. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. This is where that I was corrected, the wind turbine farm is. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And this is that lake I was referencing a little earlier. Let's say I just want to mark where this lake is, because I plan on being abeam this lake. The workflow is identical to what I did earlier. I'm just going to press and hold on that position. I'm going to go ahead and tap on more. I'm going to tap on save and make this lake. I'll go ahead and tap on save. And that will always be there. I don't have to add that to my route. I can just have that presented there. So as I'm flying this leg, as I'm in the cockpit, I have a visual annotation on my map that, hey, this is where your waypoint was. The individual user waypoints, custom waypoints, can be toggled on and off in the map layer selector. Also, I've just opened that up. I'll scroll down a little bit, and I have my user waypoints, and I can toggle that on or off. So again, it's fairly easy to work with around the area I fly. I've made lots of different user waypoints that I use for reference. That's probably the simplest way to do that. All right, so we had lots of different questions come in about adjusting altitude and different questions about altitude. So before I do that, I'm going to remove something so I can walk through this specific workflow. We had a question about how do you change altitude when you're en route. So I showed you the workaround that I did was basically I divided this into two separate flight segments and I just planned those separately. That's a workaround. It might not be the best way that you want to do it, but as ForeFlight is constructed, designed to have a single departure, single destination, if you do plan on having an en route stop, it might make sense. It probably makes sense to just plan those as two separate legs. And the way I did that was just saving the full route and basically splitting it in half into two separate routes. And then I could print the navlog for each of those, or just load the second leg after I've landed, after I've refueled, load in that second leg. That's how I do it when I'm doing multiple stops on a cross country. But it may not be the best way. It may not be perfect for everybody. But if I do want to make an en route altitude change, if I tap on a waypoint in my flight plan drawer here, oops, I missed. If I tap on a waypoint, you'll see I have this option to set altitude, speed, or time. I can go ahead here and change my altitude. If I change this, let's make this cross at, and I'll just make this 4,000 feet. And this will be recorded that when I cross this waypoint, this is my windmill farm custom waypoint, I should be at 4,000 feet. If I want to see how that, basically how that looks in practice, I can use this to preview my profile view. And again, this is not ideal because of the way my corridor is shaped, because I expanded that corridor out. I'm showing more hazards than I was showing earlier, but we can see that step down in altitude here at Windmill Farm. And I can make multiple different changes to altitude here as well. Let's make this one. And I know these don't necessarily follow the rules. I'm just trying to demonstrate this stuff. But you can see how that is reflected in our profile view. And again, this feature is not available for basic users. One of the things at the shows when people talk to us about what subscription levels they should have, we do recommend if you're flying, especially amongst hazardous terrain, those features are very valuable. That might be something you're willing to consider an upgrade. If you're not flying around terrain, it might not be something that you absolutely need. So there were some questions that came in relative to altitude regarding traffic patterns. You can do this with any airport. I'm going to leave the airports I have on here. So my destination airport is Truth or Consequences. When I tap on procedure, this will load up all the available procedures into that airport. This is both IFR procedures as well as, for my purposes, as well as the traffic pattern information. So I'll go ahead and tap on traffic pattern, and I'll see every single runway available here. And to be honest, I've never flown in Truth or Consequence. I use this for the demo because it was a very interesting airport. There's a flag right now you'll see on runway 07 telling me that is the best wind. This is using current weather information. So as of right now, runway 07 would be ideal, ideal based on the wind. For whatever reason, let's say I don't want to land on gravel, I want to land on asphalt. I can see I'll use runway 13 for this. That has good asphalt. It's a very long runway. If I go ahead and tap on that, I have my options here about how I want to enter the traffic. How do I want to approach this runway in under visual flight rules? Let's just do a cross midfield teardrop. You can see I can preview that here on the right-hand side. I can toggle between different options. I'm just going to do a teardrop. Again, it might not be ideal, but I just want to show how these features work. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my route. It'll take just a moment to do so. Let me scrub along my route. Let's go back up. There we go. Okay, and you can see that traffic pattern entry maneuver has been added to my map, and the traffic pattern altitude is highlighted here on the map, as well as up here in my flight plan drawer. So as I'm planning, as I'm preparing for this, or if I'm flying to a towered airport and I'm given the instruction to enter the downwind at a 45, I can enter that in the cockpit and then see, hey, this is where I need to fly to do this maneuver, to enter this pattern correctly. This is the altitude at which I need to be at. And this can be done pre-flight. And I have often done this at altitude in the cockpit as well. There was a couple questions about my annotations. So I had mentioned using my ruler tool. The ruler tool is just two fingers on the map, and then I'm basically spreading my fingers out, and that's how I'm getting that ruler tool. So I had made several annotations on the map, and I'm just going to make some scribbles on here just to reflect that. Now, the annotations will never automatically delete. There's a couple different ways we can get rid of these. So this is it's kind of a funny story, but at the shows we go to, we oftentimes have people come up, show us their iPad and say, there's all this red lines all over. I don't know how to get rid of these. And it's oftentimes because people accidentally have annotated the map. If I want to get rid of these, I can go ahead and tap on my annotation tool, and I can either undo things by pressing that undo button, or if I press clear, this will clear all annotations on the map. Now, if this is a route you're going to fly regularly, let's say whatever reason, this is something you're flying regularly and you would like your notes to stay on here, but you also fly elsewhere and you want to clear this out, what I'd recommend doing is literally just taking a screenshot of this so you have reference to it again in the future if you need to replicate those annotations. We had a question come in also about track logs, and I mentioned that at the very end, like how you could import a track log into your logbook. The questions I believe were about automatically recording and things like that. So there isn't, and this is kind of catch-all for a lot of different settings. If you tap on the More button, tap on Settings. If you've ever looked at this, you've noticed ForeFlight has a lot of settings. We do have a lot of settings. You can customize the app, lots of different ways to match your preferences and how you fly. Many people don't realize there is a search filter at the top where I can use to just search for the feature that I'm looking for. There we go. There's a space in there. And you'll notice that under track log, I have enable start stop control. The start stop control, if you look at the left-hand side of my screen, that's the record button here. I also have enable auto start stop. I have mine toggled off. What I do, rather than have it automatically start and automatically stop my track log, is I've just edited a custom checklist, and it's part of my ground run-up is I have toggle on track log, and then part of my after landing checklist is toggle off the track log. And I just find that based on the airports that I fly out of to be more accurate, and it has to do with the way the auto start and auto stop sometimes comes on. We got about, I guess, one more minute. There's a couple questions about planning with weather, and someone's asking about if you're planning flights farther out than a couple days. Can you get long distance planning? The answer is yes. There's a couple different ways you can do this. If I tap on any airport and tap on my weather tab, you'll see I have my METAR, my TAF, my daily forecast, my winds forecast. The daily forecast is a 10-day forecast. If you tap on any individual day, it's also broken down hour by hour, and I can see the forecasted conditions, VFR, MVFR, IFR, temperature, forecasted altimeter, forecasted winds for any hour of any day, again, out to 10 days. The farther out you go, the less accurate the forecast will be. And the last little tip I'll give you here is you can get that same information for any location. I'm not going to tap on a map. I'm just going to zoom out here. If I just tap and hold anywhere on the map, along the top right-hand side here, I have next to add to route. You'll see the text that says WX. I'll go ahead and tap on that. And this will give me a 10-day forecast for that position. You can see the latitude, longitude is loaded up there at the top. So again, I apologize that we did not get to everyone's questions. There was quite a few people here in this webinar. This will be posted online if you'd like to review this again. And, that's what I was going to do really quickly. If you've never downloaded the ForeFlight Pilot's Guide, it's in the ForeFlight folder, ForeFlight Drive, in your Documents tab. If it has a green check mark next to it, like mine does, that means that you've already downloaded. If it doesn't, just go ahead and tap on that and you can download this. It is searchable. You can search this for any feature you want to look at. And this will generally answer questions you may have. Alternatively, just email us at team@foreflight.com. So I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank all the other ForeFlighters for helping us out with answering questions. And hopefully we'll see you at another webinar, and enjoy flying with ForeFlight. Thank you, everyone.